All right, Karen. I don't know where we're going with this one. I have a feeling it's Lee Mazzilli.
It's actually not. It's
It's
actually I
not.
know
All
I
right.
know it's not. But fun, Lee Mazzilli. I went to Lincoln. I grew up in Brooklyn. Lee Mazzilli's mom had a
Tightest pants in
salon, and she used to be
baseball.
where I grew up. But that's not my question. And my question is not about the '86 Mets or Dave Kingman or anything like that. We were talking all about that, Eric, before you came on. My question actually is a little off the cuff, if you will, because you mentioned Davy Johnson and the confidence and things like that. And I have a 17-year-old son who's a pitcher, and he plays travel ball and he plays on his high school team. And we talk a lot about mindset and stuff like that, and he's a pitcher only. So, it's, talking to him about what happens on the field and that kind of a thing. So I'm curious, you mentioned Davy Johnson with the confidence. You just mentioned the player was losing his sons and doing all that. So I'm curious, in all the interviews that you've done, I know it was a way different time in the 70s and 80s and things like that, but has anybody ever talked about what their mindset was, or they just really used their athletic abilities, or did any of that ever come into play with the players that you've interviewed? I'm curious to know about that.
You mean, I'm sorry, could you rephrase that just a little bit?
So,
I just
like,
wanted to.
in all of your interviews and talking about the players and all the things that you know about baseball, do these players just push through everything, or did they ever work on their mindset? Did they ever, have a bad day? Like you said, Davy Johnson, like it's up to the manager to check with the players to
Oh,
see if they had a fight with their wife or something like that. So did the players ever say, you know what, I was going through something and I pushed through it and this is what I did, or or they just played and they never thought about it, like mindset. Like, I know a lot now in this day and age with my son's
right.
team, all the other teams, there's a lot about mindset and personal development and working on that portion. I'm curious to know if that ever was around back then and nobody knew about it.
Oh, well, with Steve Blass, while he was trying to overcome, well, what's been coined Steve Blass disease, the inexplicable inability to throw the ball straight. And Scott gave all the other examples, the more modern day. I mean, you talk a guy that went deep within himself. I mean, he was doing yoga, he was doing psychoanalysis. Um, I mean, he was trying everything.
In the
Um,
70s.
yeah, that's right. I mean,
Big difference. Yeah.
yeah. So he was very introspective while he was trying to heal himself, or find a remedy to his malady. But I think psychology plays a tremendous part, not just baseball, but all sports. You have to realize something, that they can't let anything seep in. It's, you hear the term tunnel vision, and I hear that a lot. It's, if you have 50,000, say you're on a pitcher's mound, and you have 50,000 fans in the ballpark, and there's a few million watching you on television. You can't let that seep in. And that's one of the things that happened to Steve. He was fine in the bullpen, warming up. His control was fine. It was that beast once he got out there on the mound. So players really have to, like Dwight Evans. I know this because I was just reading our transcript together the other night. He had over 10,000 plate appearances, and he had butterflies in every single at bat. Even outside of sports, Frank Sinatra apparently got sick before every performance, physically ill. So when you're out there performing, you can't let anything seep in. You have to concentrate on the job at hand. So I don't know if this is answering your question, but I think in today's game, there's a lot more of that. Okay, so the managers today are much different from the managers from the 70s and 80s. If you know who Billy Martin was, or Earl Weaver, they didn't give a crap what kind of day the players were having. I mean, it was a different time. These were kids of the Depression. You look at any baseball card of a manager from the 1970s, I don't care if they're 40 or they're 70, they all look 70.
That's so true.
Sparky Anderson was 41 years old when in 1975 when he managed the Big Red Machine. 41. He was completely gray and he had kind of gravelly looking skin. They all looked old. They had hard lives. So they weren't as sensitive as today. They weren't like the Bruce Boschis of today or Gabe Kapler, who's out in San Francisco, even Aaron Boone of the Yankees. They're very sensitive to the players' feelings now more than ever before. So it's an excellent question. I think a manager's role has evolved. Davey Johnson, he treated them like men. He knew that they were out till all hours of the night, the year that they were winning the World Series in 1986. But he had a few rules. One was you can go out drinking all night, or you can go out. How do I clean this up?
You don't have to.
Or you can go out screwing all night, but don't go screwing and drinking all night. I still was able to clean that up a little bit. And the other thing he would say is that the day of the game, as long as you hustled, and I mean, if you hit a pop-up, you better be standing on second base, whether that ball is caught or not. He called it the Darryl Strawberry rule. If you weren't hustling and a ball dropped, you'd be fined $500. And Strawberry would do it all the time. And so that's why he made it the Darryl Strawberry rule.
I think the lack of accountability that we have today in many areas, you see it in parenting, you see it in business leadership, you see it in sports coaching, is a recipe for disaster if you want to win, and if you want to be successful, and if you want good outcomes. So that's a topic for another day. But this has been